Welcome to the Encore Audio Archives YouTube channel. I'm Taper Dave, and this is my channel. I've uploaded hundreds of talks here that I've recorded at meetings in West LA, and I've also recorded conventions starting in 2013. I've got a bunch of those up. And Walt and Mary Murray, the original owners of Encore Audio Archives, started the company in the 80s, and Walt recorded Joe and Charlie's and a bunch of stuff down in Vista, California. My sobriety date is June 20th of 1994. I hope you find something you like, so please like and subscribe to my channel and comment down below. If you want to hear something that I don't have or that you don't see, I'll see that I get it. Anyways, take care and have a great day if you want to.
My name is Frank Wells, and I am an alcoholic. It's good to be here tonight, and if O'Hagan were here in person, I would thank him for inviting us up. But the coward went to, where is it, over on the river tonight somewhere? I hope he doesn't lose all of his money over there. You know, coming up Sepulveda, just all down below the hill here, there was a truck up in front of me. It kind of struck me kind of funny because on the back of it in great big letters, I don't know whether I'm pronouncing this correctly or not, but it was Becherokov. Was just a big name, and it sounded kind of Russian, and I figured it was a liqueur, but down below it says herbal liqueur. And I told Doris, I says, boy, I says, isn't that a gas? You can get blitzed and get healthy at the same time. I wasn't much of a liqueur drinker anyway, but I was a good bourbon drinker. And like everybody else, my story in a general way tells you how I was or what I was like and what happened and what I am like today. It doesn't say a darn thing about what it was like, because I tell you, it hasn't changed very much. Things have gotten a lot better, of course, but life is still a series of ups and downs and one thing another like that. I was introduced to the program in 1961 by a young lady that 13 stepped me into the program, actually. And my first wife had died, and she had died of our disease. And I'll say this right now, it wasn't too pleasant. She was 43 years old, and she was a winette. And I'll tell you, it's not a very pretty sight to watch a drunk die. And she was the drunk in the family. It wasn't me, because you see, she was wall to wall, and I still worked and this and that and the other. Anyway, in 1961, I was this is really the main part of my identification part right here. I was introduced to this program by this lady. We'd gone out on a first date, and that first date happened to be a dance at the old Radford Hall there in North Hollywood. And I'd been drinking all day the time I picked her up, but I was still navigating and knew what was going on and everything else like that. And when we walked in the hall, it was a Hawaiian theme. We walked in the hall, and the band was three Hawaiian members that I knew, that I drank with, Hawaiian musicians that I drank with. And I was right at home all over again. And I took my shoes off and put them up on the podium there and danced in my socks and one thing and another like that, and made myself perfectly at home and had a ball and embarrassed the living hell out of that lady. And she couldn't get me out of there quick enough. And in retrospect, from a good number of years later, why, I couldn't say that I blamed her. Anyway, that night she gave me the 20 questions. And of course, it was my wife that was the drunk, not me. But believe it or not, those 20 questions, I answered 4 of them positive that night. That's how honest I was. Oh, and that's a joke. And it was enough to give me the idea that, well, maybe I got a problem, but maybe I haven't, but maybe I better slow down or stop for a while. Well, I did stop for a while. I didn't drink for 9 years and 4 months, and I went to AA meetings, and I raised my hand and identified as an alcoholic, and I did this and I did that, and I pitched, and I went on panels and so on and so forth like that. But in my gut, I was not an alcoholic. Because you see, I did not identify in 1961 with the hard stories, the jails, and the automobile crashes, and all of that stuff. I simply could not identify, because when I came on or came near or got vaccinated, and the vaccination didn't take in 61, I had not gone to jail, I had not had a 502, I had not lost a job, and I paid the mortgage every month on time, and I paid all the bills on time, and I had 2 cars, as Bob said. He had 2 cars, and one thing and another. I never did lose mine, Bob. And I worked. I went to work on Mondays, pretty blitz some Monday mornings, but I got to work. How much work was performed was neither here nor there. I mean, half the time the guys that I worked with covered for me, but I made it. And the idea back in those days was that an alcoholic was the old bum down on Skid Row and sleeping in alleys and dirty overcoats on and food and what have you all over it, and the brown paper bag stuck out of the side pocket. See, that was the picture. At least that was the picture that I had. I didn't take into consideration that on union meeting nights down at the old Labor Temple on Maple Avenue, I always drank on Skid Row. You know, on those nights, I didn't make a habit of it, but on those nights I went into the slop chutes down there, and believe me, they're slop chutes, and drank. And I see today that I did that because it made me feel superior to the bums. See, I didn't know that I was one of them, you know, but it made me feel superior to the bums that were there. Anyway, that positive answer to 4 of the 20 questions kept me sober for 9 years and 4 months. But I didn't do a living thing to change me. I did not take an honest first step. Like I say, I would raise my hand. Any other alcoholics in the hall, I would raise my hand, because you see, I wanted to belong somewhere, somehow. I see that today. I didn't know that then. I didn't know what kind of feelings I had then. And that's the way it went. And but I didn't do anything. I didn't take an honest first step. I don't really know if at that time I had an honest desire to stop drinking, and at that time that was in the preamble. The only requirement for membership in Alcoholics Anonymous is an honest desire to stop drinking. And of course they've changed that over the years, and when I got back, I'll lead up to that. When I got back to the program, the first thing I noticed was the honest was taken out, and I realized that you can't be honest when you first come into the program, and that's probably why they took that out, you see. And it's easier to just have the desire to stop drinking and let the honesty come later. Again, I didn't take the first, second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, none of the 12 steps. None of the 12 steps. I took a little bit of a iffy moral inventory and shared it, and that's as far as I went there. I didn't really look at who and what I was and what I had become over the years, you see, through my drinking. And it doesn't matter a drop. It doesn't matter at all as to the why I started drinking. I know I love booze. I loved it. I loved every drink I took, including the one that came up, you know. And I was introduced to hard drinking on corn whiskey back in Oklahoma, and on a pint that I had hid from the sheriff the night that he raided my mother for bootlegging. And 2 nights after they busted her and hauled her off to the county pokey, I got into that pint of booze, and I got fallen down, thrown up drunk, and I was 12 years old. And that was my first real drunk. Now, that didn't continue. I didn't really get started until I was in high school, a few years later out here in Hollywood. I went to Hollywood High, and that's where I really got started. And this is actually before even legal beer came back on the market. You know, you could still get prescription bourbon, and I had a lot of colds. And I knew a doctor and stuff like that. But my mother would parcel it out to me. And my mother was one of those kind of women, if she drank at all, she drank it out of a teaspoon, 1 teaspoon at a time, and that was it. She was smarter than I was, because she would have made a fine alcoholic. She would have made a beauty had she let herself go, because she had everything going for her in that department. Anyway, I'm not here to tell you her story. Anyway, that's the way it went. And I want to emphasize, I didn't take any of the steps, and consequently, I did not change. I did not change me. And so 9 years and 4 months later, in 1972, in January of 1971 it was, a bottle of beer jumped out of the ice box that my son-in-law had left there, and I had to grab it to keep it from going on the floor, and I drank it. And that was the beginning. That was the beginning of a sad, sad trip, believe me. Because I was not one of those that went back and forth through that turnstile and through that revolving door. I went out and I stayed out. It took me 11 years to drink myself into a situation where I was willing to surrender and get back to Alcoholics Anonymous. 11 years. And I drank every day in that 11 years. Ever since, on the job, off the job, going to the job, coming from the job, stole the booze on the job. When I ran out, I carried it in my toolbox. And I guarantee you, when I walked into a house, my work took me into many homes in the high-class districts of Beverly Hills, Brentwood, and the west side out there, where there was always bars and liquor and one thing and another like that. And I guarantee you, within 5 or 10 minutes after being in that house, I knew where the booze was. If it was in the kitchen cabinet, I knew which cabinet it was in. It was just like the police departments and all of them. They have the drug-sniffing dogs and one thing and another like that. Well, that was me. I could go into your kitchen like that, or into the family room, and if there wasn't an apparent bar, I'd find it, or whatever, And a lot of my drinking was your whiskey, or your vodka, or your brandy, or whatever it was, where I wouldn't take the bottle down too far, where I was good for a couple of shots out of the bottle, without having to pour water back in it. Oh, I hated to do that. I did that on a couple of occasions. You talk about guilt? Yes, indeedy. And demoralization, wondering what that poor sucker may have thought of when he grabbed that bottle and took a swig or made himself a drink and it was half water or something like that. Anyway, and that's the way it went. That's the way it went. Until the time came when I was done. 11 years later, in 1982, I was done. And it happened that I had married this woman that 13 stepped me into the program, and we lived a life of hell. It was not a sunny day or anything else like that. Two alcoholics is pretty hard. Two sickies don't make a welly, I'll guarantee you that. And the poor thing, she was as nuts and as sick as I was. Only I knew it, and I didn't know that I was sick. I didn't know that I was sick. I didn't figure that I was. Anyway, the day of my last drunk, and I remember it very well, and God forbid that I should ever forget it, because there's a cliche in Alcoholics Anonymous: if you forget your last drunk, you haven't had it. And I keep this one alive, and I talk about it when I share at a podium or any place else. If I'm working one-on-one with another alkie, I share this part of my story with him, because to me it's a very important part of this story. This business of not surrendering, this business of not giving up, this business of denial. You see, Alcoholics Anonymous, or alcoholism, is a disease of denial. Very, very much so. I mean, it's a disease you haven't got. I haven't got. We haven't got. That's the way it goes. And we deny it up to the last damn minute. And our egos and our pride say, no, we do not have this disease. And that was me. That was me to the nines, you see. The last day of my drunk, of that 11-year drunk, was on September the 26th, 1982. It was a Sunday. And culminated a wild weekend, because naturally I always drank more on weekends because I didn't have to work than I did during the day. And This lady was pushing every button that she could push, and she was good at that. And I was getting madder and madder and madder, and I was weaving drunk and so on and so forth like that. And I felt an ungodly impulse to, well, just to smash her, you know, just to really tee off and belt her one. And that's what I wanted to do, but I didn't do it, because you see, I couldn't do it. And thank God I couldn't do it. And what it was, I used to say, I don't know what kept me from doing that. That was in the early part of my sobriety. I couldn't figure out what kept me from it, because I wanted to do that. And I realized today, had I turned loose on her and not listened and not been held back, and there was no visible force there to hold me back. And I know today it was God doing it for me. See, God was doing for me what I couldn't do for myself at that instant of time, at that particular time. So instead of being physically violent, I was verbally violent. And I'm good at that. I can cut you three ways, up, down, and frequent, you know, with my mouth. And I can tear you apart in a very sarcastic way. Still today, it's one of my character defects that I've had to work on in this sobriety, that I've uncovered, that I had to give my attention to. Anyway, I called her everything but a nice lady, and that was the end of that. And I went to bed. I went to sleep. I passed out. I don't know. I was not a blackout drinker. I only had about 3 or 4 good blackouts in my entire life. You know, I mean, where I have no recollection of what went on. I just didn't black out. But anyway, I woke up the next morning, and I remembered instantly what had gone on the night before. And I felt it like 2 cents. I felt like I was about that tall, about that big, because you see, I remembered what I had called her and what I had told her she was like and what she was and one thing and another, and how I had really blitzed her with my mouth, you know. And she wasn't a well woman. She was not well physically. She was not well mentally or emotionally. She'd have fake heart attacks to go to the hospital to get Demerol shots, you know, and that's pretty wild. How she stood it, I don't know. I can't stand this stuff. But anyway, I woke up and I sat there on the edge of the bed, and the first thought that went through my mind at that particular time was, Frank, you can't ever do this again. You cannot ever, ever take another drink. And I accepted that. And as Doris always calls it, with total surrender goes the obsession to drink. And I'll agree with that 100%, because that's what happened to me at that particular point in time. You see, without my knowing it, I totally surrendered to the idea, because I realized that if I continued to drink, that I would kill this woman. You know, you might say that I didn't like her, and I knew it, you know. And I just knew that if I continued to drink, and she would do what she was doing that particular Sunday night, that I wouldn't be here tonight. You would have another speaker. I would be up to a place where we were in just a couple of weeks ago, and where I go up and I carry the message of Alcoholics Anonymous to people like me, but didn't have a God in their life that stopped them, as I was fortunate enough and blessed enough to have the grace of this God to stop me from doing what I wanted to do on that particular night. These men are doing 25 to life. Some of them have been there for 19 or 20 years. Some of them don't even have the foggiest idea when they're going to get a date, you know. And we go up there once a month to carry the message that there is a better, in spite of their condition and in spite of where they are, there is a better way of living. And that's what Alcoholics Anonymous is to me. You see, it's a real good substitute for booze. It's putting something of value into my life and taking the place and giving me the same effect that booze did. Because the doctor's opinion in the first part of the book will tell you in black and white words, or black words on white paper, that men and women drink essentially for the effect. And the big question is, what's the effect? The effect primarily, as I see it for me, is to get the hell away from me, you see. Because I've come to realize in these last 14 years that there is no problem out there except the ones that I have created. And you're looking at the problem as you look up here at me. I am the problem. That's what I have learned in Alcoholics Anonymous, and that's what the program has taught me, that there really is no problem but me. And this is pretty hard to digest because, you know, we love to blame the other person. We love to blame her, or we love to blame him, or we love to blame the job. And I imagine Bob might have gone through that because he got fired and he wondered why in the hell the boss fired him. He's a pretty nice guy. Well, it's his fault. Bob, I just wanted to say for this personally, there's one good advantage to this, you know. You can collect unemployment for a little while anyway. But anyway, that's what I've learned, and that's the way I work my program today. One day at a time, one moment at a time, one instant at a time, 1 second at a time. Because when you strip everything away, that's all we have is now, right now. There is no promise that any one of us is going to make it home tonight. We hope we will, we think we will, we pray that we will, and we're sure that we will. But there's a lot of people that go to work every morning and never make it to the job. There's a lot of people that leave the job and get on the freeways at night that never make it home, fully intended to go home and play with the kids, see the wife, or mow the lawn, or whatever, and they never make it. All you got to do is turn the radio on and listen to the traffic reports. And the way some of them drive, it's no wonder. And that's a little something I've had to deal with too. But anyway, as I said, men and women drink essentially for the effect. And that's what I drank. I drank to get away from me. And that's all I drank for. Because you see, I was dissatisfied with life. I mean, life wasn't giving me what I deserved. I'm an intelligent person. I've got a lot of good sense, blah, 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 you know. And why can't I have it easy like Joe Smith or whatever down the street, you know? Why do I have to get on my knees and work for a living? I was a carpet layer for 32 years. That's why I've got a fake knee and one leg here now. And the other one I can hardly stand on sometimes. But anyway, you know, why wasn't life better to me? Why wasn't life better to me? And I know today that life wasn't any better to me because I couldn't have dealt with it. I'd probably been a worse drunk. See, when I was a kid, I thought I wanted to be a lawyer. And then at one time prior to World War II, I worked for a company, a petroleum outfit, and one of the brothers in this outfit was the corporate lawyer, and that gave me the idea that I wanted to be a corporate lawyer. And I could have been a good one. But when I came out of the service, I wanted to play. I didn't want to go back to school. I'd gone to school before the service a little bit, covered a lot of the pre-legal requirements and so on and so forth, but I wanted to play, you know, and I wanted to drink. And I didn't want the responsibility of having to go to school and waste all that time, you know. Like the old story, you know, it takes you 10 years to get your education, so what? If you don't go, if the 10 years is going to go by anyway, you know, it's an old joke. But anyway, so I didn't go back to school. And as I got into my trade and one thing another like that, and I would have days that I wasn't satisfied. So I drank, naturally. And as I see it today, though, I think that was God taking care of me too, not giving me what I wanted at that particular time, because I would have been worse off. I wouldn't be alive today, folks. I would not be alive. If I'd had money, marbles, and chalk, and a position, one thing another like that, I wouldn't have lived. I would not have lived. Today I stand before you, and 4 months from now I will have lived 80 years. And that's a long time. And I've learned a lot. You see, I was not a youngster when I got back to the pro. Hell, I was 65 years old when I sobered up in 82. And in September of 82. And It's been nothing but better. It's gotten so much better, and it's taken a long time. Alcoholics Anonymous and the program of Alcoholics Anonymous is a very simple program, but it isn't easy. And it's easy because we make it hard for ourselves. And I'm sharing out of my own experience. Now, I gave up when I came back, and I surrendered, and I did not want to drink, and I've never wanted to drink to this day, because a drink will not solve anything. It'll ease the pain temporarily, because it'll give me back the old arrogance. It'll give me back the old ideas again, and one thing another like that. But it's not going to solve anything. The only way I can solve what appears to be a problem is for me to get the hell out of the way and let God work through me to solve it. And that's what I've learned in Alcoholics Anonymous. You know, if you read the chapter to the agnostic, somewhere there in about the second paragraph of the chapter to the agnostic, it tells you that's what this book is precisely about, is to find this higher power. Because lack of having a higher power in our life is the major problem that we have. That's what makes us restless and irritable and discontent. That's what made me restless and irritable and discontent anyway, is because I was lacking something. And I didn't know how to go about finding it. The strange part about it is it's never lost, you know. Now that really turned me on when I discovered that. God has never been lost, you know. It's always been available, you know. In the other book that some of us read from time to time, it says, "Behold, I stand at the door and knock." Oh boy, my door was knocked on a lot of times, and I didn't pay any attention to it, you see, because, again, I was practicing my disease of selfishness and self-centeredness. And that's the exact nature of the disease of alcoholism as far as I'm concerned. That's the way I work it for me. Selfish and self-centered. And whatever I do that causes me to be a little bit disturbed or anything else like that, it always comes back to my selfishness and self-centeredness. It's because I'm not getting my way about something, or it's not happening soon enough. In other words, I'm not being taken care of, you see. And I pout. I pout like a little kid, you know. And a prime example of that, here I am, 79 years old, and I constantly am reminded from time to time of a time when I was about 5 years old back in the little town of El Reno, Oklahoma. And my mother was with me, and I was with her, rather, and she had gone into a J.C. Penney store there on the main drag of this little town, and the building is still standing there, because we were there just a couple of years ago. And I, for some reason or another, laid down on the floor, and it was one of those wooden floors that they had back in those days, you know, that was oil-soaked and everything else like that with the sawdust they swept it with. And I laid on the floor, started screaming and kicking my heels. And I recall distinctly to this day that my mother just very calmly turned to the lady there, the attendant or whatever, and said, "Do you have a back room that I might use?" And the lady must have said yes, because I recall coming up off of that floor like I'd been catapulted off of that floor. My mother reached down and swoom, like that. And she was good with whatever tool was available at busting my little butt. Believe me. Now, the only reason I did that, for some reason I got out of sorts. Maybe I wasn't getting the attention that I felt that I deserved. You see, my mother was pretty tough. And she had had experiences in her young womanhood that had soured her on life in general. And she didn't express love very well. Her way of expressing love was a board or an ironing cord or something across the seat of my pants. And that's the way I got attention. Like, I never will forget this one time back there in this little town, another little town. It might have been El Reno, it probably was, where I went around and told all the neighbors that my mother wasn't feeding me. Now, why would I do that? I wanted attention. You see, alcoholics love attention, and they'll go to any extreme in order to get it. And sometimes it crops out in childhood, sometimes it crops up in adulthood. You know, all the alcoholics and all the misfits that are out there are not in halls like this in Alcoholics Anonymous. I mean, you see them every day on the freeway and on the streets of L.A. and all over, the way they drive, the way they cut in and out. And I see these people and I say, well, all the selfish, self-centered people aren't sitting in chairs in AA meetings. There's a lot of them out there. And not only that, but maybe some of them are trying to get the attention, but with the flashy cars and one thing another like that, in and out and in and out. They get attention all right, you know. If I was a motorcycle cop, they'd get a lot of attention. But anyway, see, everybody wants attention and everybody wants a little love and stuff like that, you know. And I think alcoholics require more than most. I really, truly do. That's my opinion. I know I like it. I like it today, but I have grown up. I like to think. I better qualify that a little bit. I like to think that I have grown up to emotionally and mentally and spiritually where I don't make those kind of demands on other people. I don't make those kind of demands on my wife. She does not have to give me her constant attention. Oh, thank God for that, because one of these days I'm going to have to operate and get the telephone out of her ear, because she spends a lot of time on the phone because she does not sponsor, but she has a lot of girls calling her, a lot of women calling her and stuff like that. And that's great. That's wonderful. You know, that is wonderful. And so when she's busy, I go my way, I do my thing. If I have to leave the house, I let her know that I'm leaving and I'll be back at such and such a time. I have that regard, you know, so she doesn't wonder what happened to me, where I am, you know. And she knows where I've gone if I've left the property. And so I don't require all that anymore, you know. And kind of jumping around, but when I share, after the identification part, like I told Don earlier, I said, after I get through with that 11-year drunk, you know, the 9 years of being sober only, physically sober only, and the 11-year drunk, I really never know what in the hell is going to come out, folks. Honest to God, I don't know. Because, you see, I figure that I'm just a channel, you know. I'm just a channel for God. And it's God doing the talking and carrying the message through me. I've had a little experience in sobriety. I cherish my sobriety. And sobriety means a lot more to me than it did before in those 9 years. Sobriety amounts to a lot more than just staying physically sober. Physically sober does not get it done. I can testify to that. Does not get the job done. Not going to meetings does not get it done, because that was part of the way I handled it. I quit going to meetings before I went out. I quit associating. Had I continued doing what I was doing, even as poorly as I was doing it, maybe I wouldn't have gone out. And believe me, there is some regret there. Not a whole lot, but naturally there is regret there that I wasted those 9 years that I hadn't taken a drink. Those 11 years that I did drink, that adds up to 20 years. You see, I would have celebrated 35 years this last September instead of 14, you know. But what had to be, had to be. I feel this way. I had to do what I had to do in order to get to the point where I could give up and totally surrender and start building a life in Alcoholics Anonymous and get what I have today. Because there's no amount of liquor that can supplant what I have today in Alcoholics Anonymous. You see, Alcoholics Anonymous has given me a peace 98% of the time. Has given me serenity 98% of the time. It's given me a way of life 100% of the time when I choose to follow that way. You see, the choice is mine. And just because I am not drinking does not mean that I don't lapse into the old way and the old habits from time to time, because I do. I certainly do. Because again, selfishness and self-centeredness is the cause of all of our problems. It's in the book that way. There's a lot of good stuff in that book that I found there. And there's a lot of good stuff in that crazy book and ill-written book that I live by. That in the 12 and 12. The 12 and 12 in the 10th step tells me that there's a paragraph in there that tells me that if I am disturbed about anything, I had better look at me and look at my spiritual condition and where I am today. I had better check it out. And that takes me in the 10th step. And boy, I'm telling you now, this is what separates the men from the boys, because, and this is where that honesty, that rigorous honesty is so necessary. Because who of us wants to say, I am wrong? I don't want to say I'm wrong. I don't like to say I'm wrong, even today. But I have to. When I'm wrong, I've got to be the first one to admit it. Because you see, if I don't look at it and admit my error and my wrong, then it's going to get worse. Resentments are going to develop. Anger is going to develop. And God knows my blood pressure can't stand any anger. That's for doggone sure. Because my blood pressure will go sky high when I get angry. So I have to watch that. I have to be ever watchful. Ever watchful. You know. As an aside, now one of my meetings that I go to is a 7 o'clock in the morning stag meeting, men's stag meeting, 7:15, 7 days a week. And believe it or not, it's held in a bar. And it's one of the most comfortable meetings, and boy, it's a good one. I've heard more honesty come out of men in that meeting than I have anywhere else in other stag meetings and so on and so forth. I mean, these guys really share from the gut and honest, you know. And that's great. That's great, because what that does is it keeps me on track. You see, it keeps showing me what I have to do in order to stay comfortable. And what else I have to do in order to stay comfortable is to share this experience, because I think the experience of sobriety is far more important than the drinking experience. We share our drinking experience purely for identification, you know. And at least that's the way I see it. You know, that's the way I look at it, because if I were strictly a drug addict and hadn't had any experience with drinking or anything else like that, I'd have no business being here. Absolutely no business being here at all, because I'm hard-nosed as hell about that. I think one of the worst things that ever happened to Alcoholics Anonymous is the dual addiction. And I know that I get a lot of argument about that, because 90%, 99, 95% of the people coming in, the young people coming in today, are duly addicted, you see. And Bill warned us about that early on, that it would contaminate, and I've seen it. I have seen it happen, where someone will get up and they'll talk about a little alcohol and a whole great big bunch of drugs, and the meeting goes to hell. It really does. I cannot identify with that. I learned early on through a major surgery that I had here 3.5 years ago that I can't play around with any of that damn stuff. To show you how evil our mind is, or how quirky our mind is, my mind is anyway. Yours might be well, mine isn't. You know, I was laying up there in the hospital just prior to going down into surgery, and this corpsman came in and said, well, they want to give you a little something to relax you. And I started to say no thanks, but instead what came out of my mouth was, what is it? And he said, Demerol. And I started to say no. But my head kicked in and said, hey, wait a minute, don't say no just yet, because, you know, we've never had any of this, and we've heard that it's real good, you know, so why don't we try it? Because it's legal. This time it's legal, you know, so why don't we try a little of it? So I said, okay, and I rolled over and bared my cheek out there, and he harpooned me, and 5 minutes later, if I could have got that man, I would have broke his arm. I was sick. My stomach was sick. I wanted to throw up, and I couldn't throw up because I'm getting on the dadgum gurney to be wheeled down. And my head felt like it was out here, and I was hot, and I felt miserable. And I said, no more. No more of that stuff. And then after the surgery, when I was down in ICU for a while, I had to spend 24 hours down there because it's where they had to do a bypass thing. And here he comes again, wanting to give me another shot. And I told the nurse and attendant, I said, you get him out of here and write right on my chart. None of that stuff. None of it. I can't handle it. I can't handle any of that stuff. Just can't handle it. And I don't want it. I don't want it. I love booze. I love booze. I love the taste of it. I love the taste of it. And boy, oh boy, I did love the effect. But you see, I love the life that I have today, too. I love the life of sobriety. I love the life of being able to drive down the street and a black and white pull in behind me and I know he's not after me. You know, I love that feeling. I love that feeling of being able to get into my vehicle and get out here in the mad traffic of Los Angeles and say, well, it's going to be a safe trip because God is with us, you know. And God goes before me to make straight the way and smooth the path. And all of that I have found in Alcoholics Anonymous. I have found this higher power that was never lost. It was always there waiting for my recognition. And even today, at any time, it's there waiting for my recognition. That higher power that can do things for me that I cannot do for myself. That higher power that can help me find lost things. That little voice, that little inner voice that will come to me every once in a while and tell me how to do something. You see. It's absolutely amazing how it does work. I just giggle sometimes because the other day I was looking for some tapes that I had shot when we were in Bryce Canyon and a couple of other places this summer, and Doris had hid them from me. I have to blame it on her somehow. But anyway, I had looked in a number of logical places for them and couldn't find them, and I was going in the front room and I says, come on, God, let's quit kidding around about it. Show me where those doggone tapes are. Because I know they've got to be around here somewhere. And I happened to look down at a piece of furniture that I knew had a space underneath, but it had a drape on it. And I automatically looked in there, and there were the tapes that I'd been looking for 2 or 3 weeks. Now, you can call that coincidence if you want to. I don't care what you call it. It's all right with me if you call it coincidence. I don't care. See, I think it's something else. I think it was the answer to that prayer, because that was the sort of a prayer when I said, hey, God, let's quit fooling around now. Let's find those tapes. You see, strange prayer, but I am of the opinion that almost every thought and every word is a prayer of a type. See, every thought that I think is a type of prayer. Every word that I use is a type of prayer, because God is ever with me. You see, as Doris says, it's right here, right here. It's the life force within me. You see. Could be here, it could be up here, it could be, I know it's not up here, there's nothing up there. On me there isn't anyway, I know. That's what got me into trouble, was this up here, you see. And this could still get me into trouble. As I've said, you know, when I get into self, alcohol is a problem. You betcha it is. But it's not the problem. It's not the problem. I am the problem. I don't know what your problem is, but for me, I am the problem. I looked in the mirror and I was shaving tonight after I had my shower, getting ready to come up here, and I was looking at the problem. I was shaving the face of the problem, you see. I don't have to cut my throat anymore. I don't have to want to cut my throat, you see, because I recognize that. And it's made my life so much better, because, you see, I have to take responsibility. I cannot blame, I can blame her. I was going to say I can't blame Doris for anything. I can blame her, but it would not be right, and I have to admit it. That honesty requirement for membership in Alcoholics Anonymous or desire, you have to be honest with yourself. You know, chapter 5, as we heard read tonight, rigorous honesty. I've added one word ahead of that for my own personal use. It's got to be brutal. Because I do have to be brutal with myself sometimes when I don't want to be. I have to separate myself out here and say, hey, jackass. And I have to go at it just like I would go with a newcomer that I'd be working with or something like it. In fact, I'm harder on myself than I would be with a newcomer. But I have to do it, you see, because I don't want to admit that I am wrong at any time, because my ego doesn't want that to happen. My pride, my male ego does not want that to happen. It's protecting itself is what it's really doing, you see. It doesn't want to be put into a jackpot where it's going to be on the defensive. It goes on the defensive right away, you see. I don't like to admit that I'm wrong. No one of us does, I don't think. But we have to. And that's that rigorous honesty that chapter 5 talks about. And that's what I have to live by. And by doing it and by being willing to do it, I've had some little progress in my emotional state. Most of the times I act like an adult today. Most of the times I think like an adult. I don't go off into emotional childish tantrums anymore. I like to think that I have a good spiritual condition as long as I work on it and keep my focus on that, because again, that's what Alcoholics Anonymous means to me, is to find this higher power, to focus on it, and to progress spiritually. It was what I was looking for in other disciplines when I was 20 years old, 21 years old. Looking for what I found in Alcoholics Anonymous, and look at the road that I had to follow in order to get here. You see, I'm grateful for every drink that I ever took, including those 11 years. I regret those 11 years for the loss of time, for the wasted years, you might say, to some extent. Can't help it, I'm a human being. But then I'm also grateful for those 11 years, because those 11 years culminated into a total surrender that has given me what I have today. Thank you very much.
Sorry to interrupt your viewing. Taper Dave here. Just wanted to take a second to ask you to like and subscribe to my channel. Let me know if you like what you're listening. I've got some very good talks here, and this one's a great one. Just curious, do you think this is better than Zoom? Tell me what you think. Okay, this is how I prepare my drone for launching. I like to do it inside the cab of my truck so I'm not standing outside in the weather. To install the joysticks for control, up and down, right and left, powered on. I have an Android phone that I use to connect it to the drone with. And it's actually controlled through the iPhone, through an app. Oops, wrong way. It's actually controlled through the iPhone, or through this Android phone, through the app. It's actually controlled through the Android phone, through an app, and you connect it through this short connection right here.
Remote control connected.
Remote control's connected. So I pull out the drone. I have to extend the legs. Long legs extended first, then the short legs. Remove the gimbal protector. Set that aside, then power it on one short burst, in one long burst. I lay it down. So I have to go to calibrate. So the drone's not connected yet. It shows you here as this drone gets disconnected, even though the remote's powered on. So the drone has to establish it's connected. So I go into the app to calibration mode. First I'll calibrate the remote controller. Start calibration. Out, in, oop, out, in, up, down, and then this little wheel is to control the gimbal. So it's calibrated. Go to gimbal calibration, start calibration, and then it calibrates the gimbal. I don't know if that shows up. The gimbal's moving all over the place. Changes, you can see it on the video. And I'm calibrated to take off. It's acquired 7 satellites at the moment. There are 26 satellites up in the sky, which it has to acquire before you can take off. So it's connected. It's got enough satellites. This is white. I can go to press this little arrow button, swipe right to take off, and it would start the motors if I slid this to the right. But I'll wait till I get outside. Don't want to do it inside.